Welcome to Guiding Stars. This is Rose Marcus, and I am covering for host Kristen Fontana today. Thank you for joining in, and I'm all alone here, which is perfect for the transit of Mars currently traveling retrograde. So we shall begin. And for anyone who is listening out there, Evolutionary Astrology, the work of Jeffrey Wolf Green. If you are interested in serious study, please visit the school website, schoolofevolutionaryastrology.com. And Kristen Fontana writes a wonderful weekly column, which you will find on her website. And I, Rose Marcus, also write a monthly column. And you can find that on my website as well, too, rosemarcus.com. So now that we have the advertising out of the way, let's get into the stars for the month ahead. So, wow, you may be feeling under pressure. I know that I certainly am, and it really feels like there has been absolutely no let-up. And indeed, that is the nature of the stars, and we're into kind of the final stretch of the year here. So it isn't getting any easier, but we are getting through it, and we are getting through it together. So hold on to your hats and breathe. Please breathe. So, of course, it has been a very, very intense month with the fires in Oregon and California. And heart and prayer goes out to all those who have been suffering through devastating loss. We have Mars currently traveling through the sign of Aries. We have Chiron also in Aries, and both of those are very significant fire energy. Aries is all about fire energy and is all about burning off all of the impurities. Fire is a great purifier. And, of course, it never feels, it's difficult. It's so difficult. We've been experiencing so much on the planet throughout this whole year, and it has been quite devastating and life-altering for many of us here. But there is a light at the end of the tunnel, and sometimes when you have to relinquish so very much, somewhere in there you find the gift. And even if it is in the very smallest of kindnesses that are shown to you, or in those quiet moments when you simply have to say, I just have to really let go of this. That begins the journey of a whole new reality. And certainly Mars retrograde will continue until November 13. Mars is generally a 5 to 6 week transit through a sign. But because of the retrograde, which started on September 9, we are experiencing 6 months of Mars in the sign of Aries. Mars corresponds to the prime directive of your soul for your evolutionary growth. And when Mars is in the sign of Aries, it's in its natural sign. So it is a time frame of breaking new ground. And when we have Mars in direct motion, Mars is the desire nature, how we are, it's the cutting edge of our soul's desires in any given moment. Mars represents instincts and impulses and action-taking. When Mars is in retrograde, the retrograde influence is always an individuation archetype. It is meant for some pullback. And it is meant for you to check in with yourself again. Mars retrograde is a separation impulse. It creates a wider divide between you and it. And that serves a purpose. You know, I think that we run on automatic pilot so much in our lives. You know, we're always, especially right now, just coming to the end of September and the beginning of October, we have so many planets that are putting us under pressure, and it's hard to keep up, and there's not enough minutes in the hour, let alone hours in the day, and we feel pushed to the limit. And and yet, feeling that we don't have the energy to do it, and yet having to keep going and having to persevere. The Mars retrograde is meant to pull us back a little bit so that instead of being on this automatic pilot, you start to tune in and listen now to the feedback that you're getting from your own soul. What is it that is appropriate for you now? Is it for you to keep going in the same way? Or is there perhaps another way to see it, another way to do it? Certainly, what happens with Mars in retrograde is to say you can't fight it or force it. If it is not coming naturally, it is, it's not going to work no matter how much you are forcing or pushing on that particular item there. But when you pull back, the whole intention is to let what is naturally firing up or naturally developing to overtake you and to go in that direction. Leave whatever it is that isn't working for you right now, that idea of I've got to make this decision, I've got to take this action, I've got to get this done. If you're not able to do that right now in any kind of smooth running way, or if it doesn't feel like the door is going to open there, just leave it alone. I always think when I'm under a lot of pressure and I've got like 10 things to do and I'm really jammed up at about item number 1 on my list, and no matter what I do, however I try to approach it, it just isn't coming. But if I finally say, okay, well, I'm just going to leave that alone for right now because I just don't seem to be able to wrestle with it very well, but I'll go on to number 5 because somehow maybe I can do that quickly, and maybe that's an easier thing that I could just get out of the way for now. It's amazing how when you kind of switch tracks, that other thing will sort itself out. So I want to ask you to maybe pull back from the frustration, from the resentment, from the anger piece of it, from the wrestling that you're doing with yourself, and just to take a little moment here. It's also like running out of steam. Haven't got any fuel in the tank. Sometimes if you just sit down for 5 minutes, you'll find that energy again. So I want to offer that to you as you attempt to move forward. And let me also say that I'm asking you to pull back right now on the frustration, on the wasted energy fronts, all those kind of negative perspectives, how frustrated you are with someone or something. That frustration, it's good fuel anyway. It's good fuel to have that because some chasing is a positive. It kind of gives you a little push that you may need, but know how to qualify that as best you can. On the other hand, this is a moment right now for through this coming week. We're just now at the end of September, and we've got some big stars coming up for the last few days of September and a full moon opening the month of October. It is an opportunity timetable. So if you can jump into it quickly, if it feels like that impulse is there and there's something that you could maybe, thrust the action switch on right now, and it seems to be working for you, that's the right thing to do. You'd be surprised at how advancing that can be, how empowering that can be. If the energy is there, that's the whole piece of it, is knowing how to qualify when you are flogging the dead horse and when you are gathering up some good momentum. The good momentum it'll be facilitated. I just had a client who had emailed me and said, Rose, I want a reading because I'm thinking about selling my house and moving out of here. And by the time I got back to her, she said, well, train's already out of the station. I listed the house yesterday, and I've got 4 offers on it. That kind of thing. When you feel that momentum and you make a decision and then all the other pieces fall into place around it, that's when you know that the action taking is likely to be correct for you. If you make that decision, that impulse says, yeah, I'm going to do that, and then the next thing you run into is the wall, and you keep running into the wall, then that's your answer as well, too. Now, Mars, any planet that is in retrograde, and Mars is in retrograde, as I said, until November 13th, so we're just at the start point of that. Any planet's retrograde motion is its relationship to the sun. And the sun is the creator energy. It's the creative force energy. So it is how that planet is aligning with the sun and aligning with its own creative process. Mars is instinct and primal energy and will and drive. It's the action-taking planet, and it is the subjective orientation here of what I desire. And as Mars and the Sun do their dance in this retrograde cycle here, the Mars retrograde is going to help you to qualify exactly what it is that would be in your best interest in terms of Mars as the will of the soul. In retrograde, the soul represented by planet Pluto, the relationship between Mars and Pluto. When Mars is retrograde, the soul is looking to call back the willfulness of the subjective ego. So pulling back so that personal will and soul will realign. So in terms of this readjustment factor in relationship to the sun, which is that creator energy, the whole process of realigning with what it is that you truly desire, that your soul truly desires for your growth. Now, in terms of the Mars retrograde, when the planet lines up, any retrograde, when that planet lines up with the sun, which Mars will do in an opposition on October 13. That will be the halfway mark of the Mars retrograde cycle. So between now and that date, October 13, we are in a process of working the kinks out of the system, of seeing what it is that is not working. I call it the negative perspective of, this isn't working for me. I've got to make an adjustment here. That's not going far enough for me. I'm fighting here in a way that I don't want to fight, and so forth, right? All of that kind of dynamic. So coming to October 13, know that that's part of the process of figuring out that elimination program. What is it that I can check off the list for myself that I should ditch in terms of not allowing it to get the better of me? From the second half of the month, Mars will be in a process of better reconciling or better evaluating, being able to look now and see a better way to integrate and to process and to establish. So it's going to be moving forward in that way. So that's a little direction on the Mars transit. Now, when Mars and the Sun line up on October 13, it will also be the day that Mercury turns retrograde. And Mercury will turn retrograde in the sign of Scorpio. Mercury will be retrograde from October 13 until November 3rd. The planet starts retrograde in the sign of Scorpio, and at the end of October, it will back into, as of October 29, it will back into Libra, where it will finish out the retrograde on November 3rd, yes, the date of the USA election. It will continue in Libra until the 13th of November, and we'll finish off the transit through Scorpio by December 1st. As of now, we are entering into the shadow period of that Mercury retrograde period. So we have Mercury moving. Sorry, I'm just trying to find it here on my calendar. I'll find it here in a moment here. But Mercury is just moving into the sign of Scorpio, and it's already setting up for its shadow period, so all the work that is to be done. Mercury in Scorpio is about uncovering. It's about peeling back more layers. And it's going to be quite a dynamic Mercury retrograde. So I think it's been, as it has been with COVID, the numbers are increasing and intensifying. And it's been very, very hard to tell the news reports, all the information that we've been getting on get ready for the second wave. We don't even really know whether the second wave has actually started now or not. It is hard to tell one wave from another. We are continuing along the intensity dial. There is pretty much no let up right through until the end of the year. But we are in that final stretch right now. So whatever it is that is happening for you, know that, here's the thing, I've been feeling this myself, I'm just waiting till the change happens and then it's all going to be okay. And, I just wait till I get to the breather and it's all going to be okay. Well, for right now, that idea of things going back to the way they were, or getting back to some kind of even keel that we remember. Well, we are going to have the opportunity to get it under better control. We have that opportunity in every moment that we live and breathe, of course. But things aren't going back that way. So waiting for that moment when you can resume kind of business as usual, as I say, is not going to be possible. So right now it is, and this is the Mars piece of that. I always say it's like, unplugging from the electrical outlet. It's time to unplug and to look for a different way to recharge the battery, right? So very important right now. And even within that, when you know that there's so much going on with the stars, this is why I think it's so important to have some background in astrology, or to have some understanding of what the influences are that you're dealing with at the moment. Is what I always say is that so long as you know where you are on the wheel, you can deal with that. And if you know, as Kristen and I have been talking about in many, many shows, that radical reinvention of existing reality from the ground up, we're in the throes of that right now. I mean, it's evident from every angle that you can possibly look at. If you accept that fact and you start your creative process from right there, it will change your instincts, it will change your impulses, it will change your viewpoints, and it will change your judgment patterns on what it is you feel that you need in order for you to proceed and to create and to thrive in your life, for you to make those inroads. And it will help you to feel at ease about being more of a risk taker in terms of reinventing your everyday reality, right? So lots to share in this month ahead. As we move today, moving to the end of the week, on September 28th, Saturn finishes the retrograde cycle that it started in April. And on October 4, Pluto will end the retrograde that it started at the end of April. This means just over the month of September, we've had Pallas Athena, which has been traveling in Capricorn, finish its retrograde. Jupiter, which has been traveling through Capricorn, finishing its retrograde. Saturn, as of the 28th, traveling through Capricorn, finishing its retrograde. And October 4, Pluto, which has been traveling through Capricorn, also finishing retrograde. We have had all the planets in Capricorn retrograde for the past several months since the spring. when Capricorn, all that Capricorn energy is retrograde. Capricorn is the archetype of the structural dynamics, the archetype of the reality base. When all those planets are in retrograde, it is a suggestion of that the reality base, or the structural format, that the judgment patterns, the crystallized the judgment patterns, the way you think you must proceed or have to proceed, or all of that kind of information here, the structural dynamic is not holding itself up well enough. We can't rely on that external, can't rely on that reality. Still be that secure foundation. The whole beauty of that retrograde, all those Capricorn retrogrades, are to break down the consensus of the way that you are judging your reality and the priorities that you have, the shoulds of your life, to break down those kinds of rationales that say, I have to keep going in this way because. And although right now we're still in the throes of working the kinks out of the system, and you may not have a good finishing point to the end of that sentence, the breakdown process is productive. It is useful. You have to trust that after the breakdown process, there's a whole new landscape, a whole new field to be planted. I just heard the station break, so I'll take a pause here and come back in a moment. Right, we're back. Before the break about September 28th, the ending of Saturn in retrograde and stationing direct. Now, the thing is, when a planet switches direction, it is slowing down in its orbit before it stations to retrograde or stations to direct. So when a planet is stationing or slowing down in its orbit, it is intensifying whatever that dynamic is. So Saturn turns around, and, when some of the outer planets change position, we may not feel it quite so much like a Mercury retrograde. When Mercury starts its retrograde journey, you know it because, you can't carry on with the day like you thought you were going to, and, you get knocked aside with something, right? Normally at the end, when the retrograde period is over with, you're starting to get it together and starting to move forward. Well, the outer planets are sometimes more subtle than that. But what we have going on right now is that at the same time that Saturn is stationing direct, Mars in its retrograde pattern is forming dynamic tension to it. So we've got Mars at about 25 degrees Aries, and we've got Saturn stationing direct at 25 degrees Capricorn. That's a 90-degree angle. That's a dynamic aspect angle. And so Mars in retrograde, again, that is a pullback on action and assertion. And while Saturn is moving direct, it is picking up steam in terms of the reality setting into play. I was thinking about this in terms of, and Pluto's going to do the same thing, only Pluto's just a couple of degrees off the Mars transit, but still effective. Mars and Pluto will form a dynamic tension. I'm just looking for the date here in October. On the 9th of October. When I was preparing for today's radio show, I was thinking it might feel like a full moon for about 2 weeks here, because it is going to be, the stars are very, very, very triggered during this period of time. But the whole thing with that Saturn Capricorn archetype, Capricorn is the archetype of the authority. And there are two kinds of ways of accessing control. Capricorn's an archetype of control. How do you get it under control? One is to put building blocks in place naturally, and another one is to utilize whatever it is that you can grab and run with in order to make that happen. now. So, if you're going to not do the building process appropriately, it has the potential to falter big time later. But right at the moment, when I was thinking about that in terms of the way Trump is pushing on getting that Senate seat filled this weekend, I think he's making an announcement on the same day that the funeral is for Ruth Bader Ginsburg. And, it really demonstrates the distorted control mandate that those who are looking to access power in some kind of devious way, how they will use anything at their disposal to do that. We have Mars in retrograde right now, which means that, and not only that, but Chiron is involved. Chiron in the sign of Aries, the wounded healer archetype, is involved in the full moon on October 1st, and it's being activated right now. The full moon, the sun will be opposing Chiron, and the moon conjunct Chiron during the full moon on October 1st. And so that makes us weak and vulnerable in terms of those kinds of power plays. I think that that idea of pushing that agenda forward is something that, you can't, things that are artificially created have the ability to do great damage, is what I'll say about that. The other thing with Mars retrograde is you can't force or push what isn't coming naturally. So I would think that this move that Trump is doing is quite a bit of the nail in the coffin for his re-election. I think he probably knows already that he's not going to win, and so on. But a great deal of damage can be created before we see the new day dawn, I think, with that. So watch what happens next week. Next week is very triggered from the 28th of September right through until the middle of the month when Mercury turns retrograde and the Sun opposes Mars. There's going to be a lot of action taking and a lot of pressure on the system here, I think. Chiron in the sign of Aries, that's a very, very long transit. And Chiron's the wounded healer archetype. I think the one thing about Chiron in Aries, we have both major planets in Aries now in retrograde. And when Chiron is in Aries, it is a statement of that there's no degree of separation between you and it. That we are all exposed right now to the collective climate. And that is happening through political means. It's happening through climate change. It's happening through the breakdowns that we see in terms of everything that is going on the planet. You are not separate from everything that is going on out there. So in terms of that piece of Chiron as the wounded healer archetype here, it is a destiny-producing moment. And it is for us in our own individual lives. This is what I always say, that you have come into this lifetime and you have been born on the planet at this particular moment in time as a representative of the collective. And the best that you can do, if you can't get out there and protest in the street, or you can't volunteer your services to go fight fires, or if you can't donate money to help the homeless, or what have you, whatever you can do to live your life in a more qualitative way, and anything you can do to be self-honoring and other-honoring in terms of the people in your immediate environment, this then will serve the collective. And I think about that every day when I go to the store and, somebody cuts me off in traffic, or, somebody is rude in the lineup at the store, or or what have you. And on the other hand, I always think my father taught me this when I was a child. I used to go shopping with him, and he always used to tell the cashier a joke, or to put a smile on strangers' faces, or just to smile at other people. There's so much that we can do in small ways as well as big ways. This is a moment in time for all of us to recognize that you are living your life not only for yourself, but for all of us. Okay, so we are moving forward, and as this tension-producing aspect on Monday with Saturn stationing direct, it gives the opportunity to start to construct something in some kind of new way. Mars in retrograde, aligned with that, it's a shift of consciousness that takes place. And along with that shift of consciousness on that day, Mars and Venus are in this lovely format. Kristen and I always talk about this. There might be a challenge here, but, where is the opportunity? And Venus is in the sign of Leo and forming a lovely trine to that Mars in Aries, and also to the karmic axis. I heard the station break, so I'll just pause there and come right back. All right. And so I was just mentioning before the break about that September 28th date and the fact that Saturn's stationing direct, which makes that very potent, something crystallizes, something drops into place. And there is some development that we're going to see out of that that's constructive. Mars in retrograde is a suggestion of a shifting of consciousness taking place. And additionally with that, the Venus position in a lovely format, a trine to Mars. Venus is in the sign of Leo. And Venus is the magnetic principle planet for one. It's an attraction archetype. Venus is all about what has value and meaning. And it is all about relationship. And I always say that when I talk about relationship, I'm talking about me to me, me to you, and me to us. Now, Venus is, of course, the ruling planet of the Sun, which is currently in the sign of Libra. So Libra month, Venus action is very important. So while we're setting up for this full moon that's coming up on October 1st, Venus is in the sign of Leo, making a lovely trine to Mars, aspecting the south node for those who are astrologically versed as well, too. A nice fire trine there. Venus in Leo says, what's best for me? This is, again, my creative opportunity here. And the dynamic of that really is for, as I always say, voting for yourself. I've decided that I'm going to do this. It's in my better interest. This gives me joy. This is what is sparking something in me. So look to whatever statements come up next week that begin with I or me first, and take a look at that and see what it is. What's the creative inspiration? Go with that because it has great opportunity, right? Okay. And not only that, over the couple of days now, Venus is going to be moving forward and moving into the sign of Virgo. And it will do that on the 2nd of October. But just before it does that, it's going to form an opposition to Ceres, which has been a very, very important transit for the entire year. Ceres has been traveling started the year in Capricorn, traveling with the rest of the gang in Capricorn. And it has taken a retrograde cycle, which has started in July and goes until the middle of October, goes until October 18. Ceres is a statement about a number of different things, qualities that I could say about it, but know that it has a flavor, or it has an energy that is quite like Pluto. It's transformative, it's metamorphic, it's an evolution, and I always call Ceres the goddess of the seasons. So as Venus and Ceres oppose across the Leo-Aquarius axis. Ceres, the goddess of the seasons, Venus opposing that. It's like a resurrection moment. It's like a new spring. It's like a springboard. It has a very positive catalyst to be able to have a breakthrough in order to be able to, leap someplace. And immediately following that, then, and after the full moon, Venus is going to move into Virgo. And as it makes its way through the month, it's going to be forming trines to all of the Capricorn planets. Pallas Athena, Jupiter, Pluto, and Saturn, all in the sign of Capricorn. Venus in Virgo is an opportunity to get to work, to do the work, and get the results. So it is corrective, it is healing, it's a fixer-upper cycle, and that's exactly what we are all looking to do, is to make some kind of improvement. So Venus is on that move along, getting ready to do that. And it will be, by the way, coming up to a nice trine with Uranus as well, too. Sorry, I'm having a little struggle finding my dates here. Oh, the 10th of October, Venus will be trining Uranus. So there's a great opportunity here to get those things fixed. I know a lot of people who are out of work are worried about finding that next job, and there is opportunity. I will say, and I've said this in many of our past radio shows, is that COVID is definitely not something to be toyed with. Wear your mask, wash your hands, maintain your social distancing. We can't really tell where it's going to go to next, but we see that the numbers have been swelling. So I ask you to continue vigilance there while all of the transits are continuing to put us under a great deal of pressure. The pressure points that we feel right now are purposeful. So instead of fighting them, take a look at what they are and what they represent, and see if you can add the math in some kind of new way for yourself. So as I look forward to the month ahead, as I said, we're opening up on October 1st with a full moon in Aries, and for those who are astrologically versed, it will be at 9 degrees Aries. Also on that day, Venus is making a breakthrough with Sedna, which is a planet of break the ice. So that's a momentum moving along there. And as we get to the 4th of October, Pluto ends its retrograde tour. So I can't really see a let-up between now and the middle of the month. We have the full moon. I think we're going to be feeling that right from the start of next week, really on the 28th, 29th of September. We have the transits, that Mars-Saturn transit that I was telling you about, and from the 30th, the moon moves into the sign of Aries. But really, you're going to be feeling that full moon right from the start of next week. A full moon in Libra opposed, with the moon in Aries. Again, it's the conflict of what I need for myself and how I need to participate or how I need to be involved. And as that moon is moving through Aries, it may serve you to sever some ties. So if that is what is on the roster for you, then I always say ripping off the bandage quickly is the best idea, especially when the moon is in Aries. Let's just make the cut and move on, because that serves very well. Let's not drag it out any longer than it needs be. All right, so that is the moving forward piece of it through the first few days of October. By the time we get to the 7th of October, Mercury and Uranus are in opposition. And that is, again, some kind of new momentum. It can be an aha moment. It can be something out of the blue. It's something unexpected. That's going to set us up for the whole trajectory that takes place. October 7, Mercury opposes Uranus. That's, something that could surprise you or something that could inspire you either way. By the time we get to the 9th, we will have Mars square Pluto. So, again, things are moving along really fast for me today. Time for another break. I will be right back. Alrighty, so we're still on the 1st of October here, and I haven't even gotten through the whole month yet, and we're getting a move on here with the show today. The 9th of October, Mars will be squaring Pluto, and again, Mars is retrograde, so it is on Pluto, these transits between the 28th of September and October 9. Mars is on a developmental curve of breaking down the reality base and creating a shift of consciousness here. And we see that in terms of how the reality is setting itself up and what it is that you are facing and what it is that you're up to. Now, that's the 9th of October. And on the 10th of October, we have that very, very lovely Venus-Uranus trine. Uranus is retrograde right now in the sign of Taurus. So this starts the Venus principle of being able to be corrective and to perhaps figure out what's missing, what's the missing blank here, what is it that you haven't gotten around to yet. There'll be an opportunity now. Something opens up to be corrected, healed, fixed, improved upon. It gives some productivity as we move forward. On the 11th, Sun and Jupiter are in square, and that builds some good momentum. On the 13th, Mercury turns retrograde, and this is on the day that again, Mars retrograde reaches the midpoint peak of its retrograde cycle with the Sun. So as Mercury turns retrograde in the sign of Scorpio, that is being able to remove the veil and to see what's under the hood. So Mercury retrograde in the sign of Scorpio, that's about going deeper with the process. It is about going deeper and figuring out what the motivation is behind whatever those impulses are. What are the motivations? What was behind the words? What was behind the action? Of course, Mercury retrograde in the sign of Scorpio. Scorpio is an archetype of, compromise, trust, and such issues. So, again, it may be revealed to you where you've been duped or where somebody has not been honest with you. That Mercury retrograde in the sign of Scorpio, where is it that you've not been honest with yourself, right? So that's going to peel back the curtain on any of that kind of momentum. It's also going to help you to analyze what's the compulsion or what's the obsession that you have, and, again, to work the kinks out of the system in terms of your own psychology. And, psychology is about being here now and playing it next. It's interesting because, of course, that's the weeks before the election, and there'll certainly be, the psychology of, how do we campaign here, or, what's the right answer for any decision-making or voting. I think the intensity dial will be up. Certainly a full moon in Libra, that brings up the social politics of things. And I think we've said this in other talks that Capricorn rules many things like, this is the reason for the uncovering of systemic racism, all of these issues which for me are just mind-blowing. I just don't understand how they keep happening today. But, this is so that we can change the system and so that we can change the laws and, and on, right? So this is that statement. But you might watch out for hidden agendas and power plays while Mercury travels through retrograde. Now, as of the end of the month, Ceres ends retrograde on the 18th of October. Ceres has been interesting because it's been its whole retrograde tour have been exactly covering the same degrees that the first Mercury retrograde of the year covered back there in February when COVID was uncovered. We didn't really know what was happening, but it was getting kicked up in the months of February and March, just as Mercury is turning retrograde. Ceres finishes its retrograde on the 18th of October. And as it moves forward, we move through the last weeks of the month. Mercury is going to be opposing Uranus on the 7th of October, turns retrograde on the 13th, and on the 19th it will oppose Uranus again for the second of 3 rounds. And I'm sorry, I don't have the date of the last opposition of Mercury and Uranus, but that will come up after Mercury finishes retrograde and moves into about the middle of November. The 12th, 13th of November, there's a cluster of aspects taking place then. So we have the whole month ahead that is going to be breaking it down, breaking it down, breaking it down. And it is, I would say that when Venus in Virgo, for example, when Virgo is happening, the Venus in Virgo transit, we pay attention to the wrong half of the sentence. It's not about what's breaking down, but it is what it is revealing in the process. So, don't take, try to switch tracks to look over to the other side and see the cup as half full, or see what you have to work with, not what you are losing in the process. Because indeed, what is being born right at this moment, what is being, it's an inception point. The Mars retrograde midpoint peak on October 13th, it's like an inception point. It's like it's a fertilizing moment, and that has about a 9-month cycle of developmental curve. Mars in transit is a 2-year cycle, so we're going to look to Mars in 2021 to be showing us what was conceived at this moment in time, what was fertilized at this moment in time. And its fruit-bearing time will be, about next spring, next summer, somewhere in that range. So you want to be very cognizant now of opportunity. A lot of things are breaking down. There's a lot of pain, punishment, and suffering going on in the world. There's a lot of loss. It's tragic to lose your home. It's tragic. But there are opportunities ahead. And if we put so much attention to the minus column, we're not going to be able to see the pluses, right? So I encourage you to look forward rather than look back. There's some good transits there. The 21st of October, the Sun is in favor to Ceres, and Venus and Pluto are in trine, and the Moon is in trine to Uranus, and that's just the day before the Sun moves into Scorpio. So there's a potential there for some fluidity or some opportunity there to kind of get you up and rolling. As we come to the end of the month, on the 25th of October is the midpoint peak of the Mercury retrograde cycle, and that is when Mercury and the Sun line up by conjunction. And so that, puts us on the upswing with the Mercury retrograde piece. The 26th, there's a good Venus transit with Sedna, which again is suggesting a positive breakthrough. And I forgot to mention that from the start of the month of October, Mercury, its movement into the sign of Scorpio is aligning immediately with Juno, the contract asteroid. That's right from the 29th of September. It is an aspect to the contract asteroid. So that brings up all contracts. It brings up soul contracts. It brings up actual contracts and so on. It is a suggestion of that your soul has chosen something very important for you to do right now, so it's about you getting recommitted to your embetterment and your empowerment program. Moving to the end of the month, on the 27th of October, Mercury will back up. Mercury is still in retrograde. It's going to back into Libra, and also on that day, Venus moves into Libra. And there's some nice aspects, the 27th, the 28th of the month. Moving forward there. So anytime Libra, we have Libra being emphasized, as you've probably heard Kristen say many times, it takes an extreme to counter an extreme, and of course Libra is about the pendulum swing. Libra is an archetype of social politics, and we certainly have all of that going on. as we are working our way towards the election. The 31st of October, the Sun is opposing Uranus, and I assume that the political climate is going to keep climbing up until the November 3rd date. Mercury will end retrograde in the morning of the election, and of course, Kristen and I will be back at the end of October to discuss the transits for November, and we'll be talking about that election date as well, too. So I've just heard the call to end the show, and again, just in closing, I will say that the first 3 weeks of the month are going to be one thing after another. We are on a pressure point right now for the next 2 weeks. The full moon is in Libra. It's going to bring up relationship dynamics. It's going to show us what the imbalances are, and make relationship matters come to a head. So buckle yourselves in and stay alert, and I wish you all the best.